When I was 12, my mother announced we were going to do Easter a little different than usual. Typically, our Easter celebrations were run-of-the-mill egg hunt, Easter. This year, we were going to go to my great-grandmother's house in Mississippi and, per her request, have an old-fashioned Easter. The plans for this were not dramatically different from my usual Easter fare, other than we were going to an old regular church, we would be dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and we would play Easter games that my grandmother, mother, and a host of aunts, uncles, great-uncles, and cousins had played. The drive was long, but a good trade-off in a way, because this trip meant skipping 2 days of school. Mom was pretty strict about our attendance and grades, but my great-grandmother wasn't doing the best, and her long-lost sister, whom my mother never met and my grandmother barely remembered, would be there. Not that an old unknown relative was especially exciting, but my mother and grandmother seemed to really enjoy stories my great-grandmother had told about her. She was pretty weird. My dad couldn't get off work, and my older brother, who was 17, begged off as well, even if it meant not getting to miss those days of school. He couldn't leave his girlfriend, apparently. So the trip was a girls' trip. Me, my younger sister Shaylee, who was 8, my grandmother, my recently divorced Aunt Megan, and her daughters, 11-year-old Mackenzie and 6-year-old Sophie. My mom took my dad's Suburban that she hated to drive so we could all ride together. Our Easter outfits were about as bad as you could imagine. Sophie and Shaylee had matching yellow dresses, white bonnets with yellow ribbons, white gloves, pearls, white patent leather shoes with lacy socks, and white patent leather purses. It seemed that they were too young to care how ridiculous they looked. Mackenzie and I didn't fare much better, although at least we didn't match. I had a peach dress and a ridiculous matching bonnet, white tights, yes, tights, white Mary Janes, and a straw purse. That was the only part of the outfit I would ever want to use again. I got out of the silly gloves, but Mackenzie didn't, with her green and blue dress, straw hat with a green and blue ribbon, gloves, a purse similar to the little girl's but bigger, and to her happiness, a pair of sandals. Mackenzie was chubby, and they couldn't find tights in her size. We arrived Friday evening and mingled with various family members. I was as curious about my great-great-aunt Zoe as the adults were, but she was nowhere to be found. My great-grandmother, that we called Gran, told my grandmother when she asked. We occupied that evening and the next day in Gran's modest house, completely yet happily overcrowded with aunts, uncles, and cousins. Most relatives were adults or teenagers, with the only other kids being a 5-year-old boy named Peyton and a 9-year-old girl named Lacey. At 12, I yearned to hang out with the big kids, but my shyness regaled me to my sister and the cousins I knew. Easter Sunday, I was surprised to be awoken so early to go to church, and even more surprised when we walked the quarter-mile to get there. Easter baskets would have to wait until after church, it was explained as we walked down the lane to the church. Grandma tried to talk Gran into riding the wheelchair, but she insisted on her cane. I got my first glimpse of Aunt Zoe. Her gray hair was curly and bushy, her eyes a wild-looking gray as well. She dressed similar to the way we did, like a little girl. She made her way around the large group, talking to everyone as we walked. I was surprised that she didn't look like my Gran. I guess my mother was too, because I heard her say, "Well, you didn't inherit the Robinson eyes." Most of us had green eyes. Aunt Zoe just smiled. The church service was not what I expected. It was so hot and so long. My sister fidgeted and asked about children's church, my mother frowning and telling her there wasn't one. The preacher yelled, shouted, and jumped. Peyton and Sophie were both scared, and we were all restless. Aunt Zoe announced she was taking the kids back because this service was going to last all day. Our parents didn't really have a chance to protest. On the way, she chit-chatted about Easter games. I wasn't even sure what an Easter game was, other than hiding and hunting eggs. She told us there were several themed games, and when we got there, she showed us the golden plastic eggs, promised to be filled with treasures. That were the prizes. The first games we played were imaginative and fun. We played an egg toss game in teams, raced with spoons carrying eggs in our mouths, had hopping races, carrot-eating races, which at 12 worried me that the younger kids may get choked, jelly bean tosses, and an Easter scavenger hunt. Aunt Zoe put a lot of time into these games. Then she said in a loud whisper we were going to start with the games our parents would say no to. She surprised us with live bunnies for the next game and revealed an even bigger golden egg for the prize. "We're going to see who can throw the bunny the farthest," she said with her southern drawl. All of us began to protest, to which she called us all babies. "Cash money in this egg. Who goes first?" she asks, tattling the egg. We all looked at each other, unwilling to harm the animals. "Okay, I guess we need to throw the kids instead, she said, making the little kids cry. Reluctantly, I picked up a bunny and gently tossed it, Lacey following suit. She cackled. Ha ha ha! The rest of you better try harder. She smiled. Sophie gave hers a better toss, but again, like our bunnies, the rabbit landed and hopped away. Come on, girlie. She pointed to Mackenzie, who picked hers up and threw it a better throw. The bunny paused when it landed, but scampered away. Peyton threw his while Shaylee held my hand and cried. Peyton's bunny laid still, clearly dead. Okay, crybaby, your turn, she told Shaylee, who cried harder. Zoe picked her up as though she was going to throw her, and I ran to her to help. Okay, she said, and gave her bunny the lightest toss. Peyton was declared the winner. Next, we were given bottles labeled Jesus Juice and told to chug. We all spit the nasty contents out, and she grabbed Shaylee and forced her to drink hers. Anyone else need help? She asked, and we all obliged. She laughed again and told us this could count for communion. We were forced to play other demented games, chick stomping, lamb sacrifice, blood drinking, and finally she told us it was time for the cross. She starts with Peyton, nailing him to the cross just as the adults arrive. Gran asks, as Peyton's father scrambled to help. Old-Fashioned Easter, written by Reddit user KittyCat40, narrated by Sinister Sweetheart.